Am I the curious? I am the curious. These stories that happen here are literally surreal. At least I think so, right? Am I stupid for telling my parents to ask their adopted children to help instead of me? My life, I'm 34, male, could have been good growing up, except my parents wanted to be good people, so they became foster parents. I think that was a noble of them. These children needed help. The bad thing is that I was ignored. I received less attention than those kids because I was independent and didn't need any help. Gifts from my grandparents became gifts to the family. The grandparents put an end to that by not buying me gifts, but taking me to walks. I went to the movies and went out to dinner and went on weekend trips with my grandparents. My dad's parents took me to Disneyland, and my mom's mom and dad took me to New York. My parents tried to get the money for these things given to me, them instead. I begged my grandparents to do it. I left home when I was 17. I graduated early and went into a trade. My grandfather was in the union, and he put me there. I've been at this for 17 years, and I'm doing well. My parents are not. They exhausted themselves taking all those children. Even the money they earned was not enough to compensate for their sacrifices. They asked me for help, and I said no. I know that if I gave them money, they will waste it on the children they took in after I left. I told them they had the plethora of foster children that could ask for money. My mother said that she was disappointed in me and that she thought she had raised me better. I said I raised myself from the age of 8 onwards. My grandparents are also broke. My parents already owe them a lot of money. My wife says she understands how I feel, but she thinks I'm being mean. My mother thinks I'm holding a grudge from my childhood, but I assume he's still giving my old stuff to the new kids. I was reflecting on the situation. Life has taught me that wanting to help others sometimes ends up helping no one. My parents, in their nobility, decided that they could be salvation for many children in vulnerable situations. I admire their desire to make a difference, but I wonder if it was truly the best choice for our family. I, at 34 years old, still find myself thinking about what would have been if things had been different. Am I being unfair by holding on to a grudge? Am I a bad child for not wanting to help now that they are in trouble? My wife says I need to let go of the past, but now I can't ignore years of emotional neglect? Leaving home at 17 was liberating for me. I worked hard, I gained my independence, but the price was high. The pain of being constantly left out doesn't go away easily. I always thought that one day my parents would recognize how much I suffered. That recognition never came, and now they expect me to be the solution to their financial problems. I keep thinking about the children my parents took in. They had needs too, and I don't want to blame them for what happened. But it hurts me to note that my parents always prioritized these children over me. Receiving less attention, less affection, and fewer gifts was hard. But what hurt most was realizing that my feelings and needs were constantly ignored. Talking to my mother is an exercise of frustration. She insists that she did the best she could, that she tried to balance things, but the reality is that I was neglected. She says that she hoped that I, being older and independent, could understand and support their decision. But now, can a child understand that he does not deserve the same love and attention as others? My wife is my safe haven, but even she thinks I'm being too harsh. She believes that helping my parents now that they are struggling would be an act of compassion and forgiveness. But how can you give someone who never apologized? How can I reach out to those who never gave me the support I needed? My reflection lead me to a moral dilemma. What is right for a father and mother to do? Should they have prioritized more? Me? Should they have found a better balance? Or maybe I should be more understanding and accept that they did the best they could given the circumstances? I know holding a grudge isn't healthy, but it's not easy to just forget and move on. Visiting my grandparents has always been a refuge. They gave me the affection and attention that I didn't receive at home. They were the ones who showed me that I was important, that I deserved to be treated with love and respect. And ironically, now they are also broke because of my parents. So how can I help my parents without harming my grandparents even more? I think about the future. I'm afraid of repeating my parents' mistakes. I want to give my children the love and attention that I didn't have. I want to be a present father who knows how to balance responsibilities and give the best to the family. But to do that, I first need to resolve these internal issues, understand what really matters, and how I can be a better person despite the hurt of the past. Maybe I should seek professional help, talk to a therapist, maybe someone who can help me deal with these conflicting feelings, finding a path of forgiveness and acceptance. Perhaps this is the key to finally finding peace and being able to move forward without a weight of the past. Meanwhile, life goes on. The day-to-day responsibilities, work, the family I'm building with my wife. Yeah, I try to focus on the present, but the shadows of the past still follow me. Every call from my parents, every request for help brings me back to that feeling of being the forgotten child, the one who didn't deserve the same attention and affection. I know I can change the past, but I can't choose how to react to it, I can decide to be a better person, a better father, a better husband. But this decision needs to be accompanied by a healing process of understanding that my parents did what they thought was right, even if it hurt me deeply. I believe that one day I will be able to look back and see all of this as a life lesson, something that made me stronger, more resilient. But for now, I continue on this journey of self-discovery, trying to find my way through the painful memories and difficult choices. My parents may never fully understand the impact of their actions, but maybe, just maybe, with time I can forgive them and, who knows, even help them in some way. Not out of obligation, but out of a genuine desire to close this chapter of my life once and for all. As I reflect on all of this, I realize that life is about choices. And each choice has its consequences. My parents chose to help children in need, but it came with a cost. Now it's up to me to choose how I'm going to deal with the consequences of these actions, of these decisions, and how I'm going to build my future from it. The important thing is that I'm not alone. I have my wife by my side, my grandparents who have always believed in me, and perhaps a therapist to help me navigate these turbulent waters. With the right support and a dose of self-reflection, I believe I can overcome this phase of my life and find the peace I seek. The days passed and I continued to reflect on my situation. Every conversation with my mother, every request for help brought up feelings that I tried to bury. I knew I needed to find a way to deal with all of this, but I didn't know where to start. I decided that it was time to seek professional help. I made an appointment with a therapist, hoping he could give me through this process of healing and self-discovery. In the first sessions, I opened up about my childhood, my feelings of abandonment, and the hurt I still carried. The therapist helped me see that although my feelings were valid, I had the power to change my perspective. He encouraged me to focus on the past and the future rather than dwelling on the past. He also helped me understand that it wasn't wrong to want to protect my current family. I had the right to set limits and decide how I wanted to help my parents, if at all. This realization was quite liberating. I realized I didn't need to feel guilty about not wanting to give them money. I could help them in other ways that didn't harm my own family. Over time, I started to feel more confident in my decisions. My wife was a great support throughout this process. She understood my internal struggles and encouraged me to follow my heart. We talked a lot about how we wanted to raise our children, what values we wanted to pass on to them. I wanted to be a present father who always put his family first without repeating past mistakes. I decided it was time to take a break. I didn't want to live with resentment for the rest of my life. I wanted to find a way to have a good relationship with my parents without feeling guilty or pressured to solve all their problems. I explained my decision to my wife, and she completely supported me. We agreed that the most important thing was the well-being of our family. I started to make small but significant changes. I called my parents and said I was willing to talk, but that it would be my way. I set clear boundaries, explaining that I couldn't help them financially, but I was willing to offer emotional support and help in other practical ways, such as counseling and financial planning. My mother was upset at first, but ended up accepting it. I think she realized I was serious about my decision, and I was. My father was more difficult. He always had a hard time accepting that I was doing things differently, but eventually he started to give in too. I think deep down, they knew they were asking too much of me. I started dedicating more time to my wife and children. I started planning family activities, weekend trips, short trips. I wanted to create happy memories for my children, something I didn't have in my childhood. I realized that being present in their lives was what really mattered. Seeing the smiles on their faces, the joy of being together, brought me a peace that I hadn't felt in a long time. My relationship with my grandparents also improved. They were relieved to know that I was finally dealing with my feelings and finding a way to move forward. We started spending more time together, reliving the good times and creating new ones. I wanted my children to know their great grandparents and feel the love I always felt for them. Little by little, I began to realize that I was not responsible for my parents' mistakes. I was under no obligation to solve all their problems. My therapist helped me to understand that helping others was not meant sacrificing my own well being or that of my family. I could be a good son without becoming a martyr. One of the most important things I learned was the importance of forgiving, not necessarily for others, but for myself. I realized that holding a grudge only hurted me. I decided that it was time to forgive my parents, not because they deserved it, but because I deserved peace. I decided to have a frank conversation with my parents. I explained to them everything I felt, how their decisions affected me. It was quite a difficult conversation, full of emotions, but it was necessary. They listened. And for the first time, I think they truly understood the depth of my pain. My mother cried, and my father was silent the whole time, but I knew this was a start. After that conversation, my relationship with my parents started to improve a lot. It wasn't an instant change, but little by little, we began to rebuild our relationship. I maintained my boundaries, but I was also more open to helping them in other ways. They began to realize that they couldn't depend on me financially, and this forced them to find other solutions. My wife and I remained focused on our family, and we decided it was time to expand, and soon received news that we were expecting our second child. It was a moment of joy and hope. I knew that no matter what happened to my parents, I was creating a loving, close-knit family. My parents still had their ups and downs, but I was more prepared to deal with them. I was stronger, more sure of myself. I knew I could help them without sacrificing myself, and most importantly, I knew my priority was my wife and children. The following years were filled with growth and learning. I learned to balance my responsibilities, to be a present and loving father, to support my wife in everything. Also, my relationship with my parents continued to improve, and I began to see small changes in them as well. They began to value my family more, to understand the importance of being present and supporting each other. So they applied that to me. My children grew up in an environment of love and security. I taught them the importance of family, honesty, and respect. I wanted them to know that no matter what happened, I would always be there for them. I wanted to be the father I didn't have, and I believe I did it. I look back now and see how my life has changed. I realized that the difficulties I faced made me quite strong, more resilient. I learned the importance of forgiving, setting limits, and prioritizing what really matters. My family is my priority, and I will do everything I can to ensure that they have a happy and safe life. My relationship with my parents still has its challenges, but now I know how to deal with them. I know that I don't need to carry the weight of the world in my shoulders, that I can help without sacrificing myself, you know? And most importantly, I know I deserve to be happy. My therapist helped me to see that my life is a journey of self-discovery and growth, that it's okay to feel pain as long as I learn to deal with it in a healthy way. That forgiveness is a powerful tool, not for others, but for myself. Now I am at peace with my choices. I know I did the best I could under the circumstances, and I am proud of the man, husband, and father I have become. I look to the future with hope and determination, knowing that regardless of what happens, I am prepared to face any challenge. My wife and children are my priority and always will be. I want to create a home full of love, respect, and joy. I want my children to grow up knowing that they are loved and valued. And I want my wife to know that she can always count on me. You can, okay, Darla? At all times. Life isn't perfect, but I'm learning to find beauty in imperfections. I'm learning to live in the present and plan for the future without letting myself to be trapped by the past. I'm learning to be the best I can be for myself and for my family. And so I move forward with a lighter heart and a calmer mind. I move forward knowing that I am one with the right path. And that regardless of what happens, I have the strength and support necessary to overcome any challenge. And we've reached the end of the stories today. So, what did you think of the whole story? If you made it this far, don't forget to support the Curious One by clicking the like button and subscribing to the channel. Until the next story, goodbye.